Whispers of the Ancients, Episode 3, Carthage, Merchants of the Mediterranean, approximately 81446 BCE. A city born of flame and exile, a queen's grief whispered to the sea, a harbour cradling ships like a womb cradles life, Carthage, mistress of the western sea, whose sails kissed every wind from Cyprus to Cadiz, whose gods watched over empires of trade, not conquest, until Rome dared to challenge her throne. Let us journey to where myth and merchant met on the shores of the ancient Mediterranean. Segment 1, The Founding Flame. Carthage's story begins not with armies or empires, but with a queen. In the 9th century BCE, on the sunlit shores of what is now Tunisia, refugees arrived from the east. They were Phoenician sailors, traders, and artisans from the city of Tyre in modern-day Lebanon. According to legend, their leader was Queen Elisa, also known as Dido, fleeing political strife after the murder of her husband at the hands of her brother. Dido led her followers across the sea in search of a new beginning. She landed along the North African coast and requested land from the local Berber chieftain, offering gold for as much land as could be encompassed by a single ox hide. The chief agreed only to witness Dido's cunning as she sliced the ox hide into thin strips, encircling a large hill now known as Biasa. There, on that rise above the sea, she founded Carthage. Carthage in Phoenician meaning new city. While myth shaped its birth, geography shaped its destiny. Carthage lay at the crossroads of east-west trade across the Mediterranean. Its deep natural harbour became a magnet for ships. From the beginning, Carthage was a city of the sea, and the sea would make it rich. Segment 2, Harbours and Hegemony. Unlike Rome, which conquered by land, Carthage expanded by trade. Its ships plied the Mediterranean waters in every direction. Carthaginian merchants dealt in silver from Iberia, tin from Britain, grain from Sicily, ivory and gold from sub-Saharan Africa. From their Phoenician roots, they inherited a deep knowledge of commerce, navigation, and shipbuilding. Carthage's navy, the most formidable in the western Mediterranean, defended its maritime interests with deadly efficiency, their warships sleek. Fast quinquiremes often outclassed those of their rivals in peace. They escorted fleets of merchant vessels in war. They blockaded, rammed, and sunk enemies with terrifying precision. The city itself grew into one of the largest and wealthiest of its time. At its peak, Carthage may have housed over 300,000 people. Multi-storied houses lined paved streets, and workshops bustled with pottery, textiles, and metal goods. At the heart of it all lay its double harbour, one for merchants, the other for the navy, an architectural marvel hidden behind fortified walls, with a central command tower rising like a sentinel over the sea. Carthage did not merely build a city, it built a network across the North African coast in Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and even southern Spain. It established colonies and trading posts. This wasn't imperial conquest. In the Roman sense, it was a web of influence secured by treaties, trade, and, when necessary, force. Segment 3, Gods of Fire and Sea. Carthage's religious world, like its language and script, was inherited from its Phoenician ancestors. Chief among its deities were Baal-Hamon, god of fertility and the sun, and Tanit, the great mother goddess of the heavens. Their temples adorned the city, and their symbols crescent moons, palm fronds, and stylized female figures were etched into stone and pottery. To modern eyes, one of the most controversial aspects of Carthaginian religion was the practice of child sacrifice. Ancient sources, including Greek and Roman writers, accused Carthaginians of offering infants in fire to Baal-Hamon during times of great crisis. Archaeological sites, like the Tophet of Carthage, appear to support this, urns containing the cremated remains of infants, sometimes inscribed with dedications to the gods. Yet modern scholars debate the scale and meaning of these practices. Were these truly sacrifices, or more symbolic rites involving children who had died of natural causes? The truth remains buried beneath layers of bias, ashes, and time. Religion for Carthage was not just ritual, it was identity. Their gods traveled with them to foreign outposts. Temples rose on distant islands. Where Rome built roads and forts, Carthage planted altars and ports. Segment for rivals in the West. Carthage thrived for centuries. but prosperity drew competition and Rome would prove its deadliest rival. In the 3rd century BCE, the two powers clashed in a series of cataclysmic conflicts, the Punic Wars. The First Punic War to 642 BCE began as a struggle over Sicily, a strategic island both empires coveted. It became a brutal naval war, and Rome, though inexperienced at sea, eventually triumphed. Carthage, humiliated and heavily fined, turned inward to rebuild, and from this wounded city rose one of history's most brilliant generals, Hannibal Barca. The Second Punic War to 1801 BCE began with Hannibal's audacious march across the Alps with war elephants, striking fear into the Roman heartland. He won stunning victories at the battles of Trebia, Trasimene, and canny defeating army after Roman army. Yet, he could never capture Rome itself, and after years of costly campaigning, he was forced to return to defend Carthage. At the Battle of Zama in 200 BCE, Rome finally defeated Hannibal. Carthage surrendered once again, its navy destroyed, its economy shackled. But Rome had not yet finished. Segment 5, the Third Punic War, Rome's wrath unleashed. After the Second Punic War, Carthage lingered defeated, but still alive. Though reduced to a client power under Rome's shadow, it slowly regained economic strength. Trade flourished again. The city rebuilt its harbor. Fields bloomed once more in the fertile hinterlands of North Africa, but Roman distrust festered. Many Roman senators viewed Carthage not just as a former enemy, but as an existential threat that must never rise again. Chief among these hawks was Marcus Porcius Cato. Cato the Elder, who ended every speech, no matter the subject, with the words, "Carthago delendo state," Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage, hemmed in by treaties, was forbidden from waging war even in self-defense. So when Numidian raiders under Rome's ally, King Mossinissa, attacked Carthaginian lands, Carthage struck back. Rome seized on this as a pretext. In 149 BCE, the Third Punic War began. This was not a war of armies, it was a siege of annihilation. Rome landed legions on the African coast and demanded that Carthage dismantle its defenses and evacuate the city. The Carthaginians refused. They fortified their walls, forged weapons in secret, and prepared for the fight of their lives. For 3 years, the siege dragged on. Carthage's defenders showed astonishing resilience, fighting street by street, rooftop by rooftop. Women and children melted down jewelry for weaponry. Priests made desperate offerings to their gods. Hunger and fire devoured them from within, but still they resisted. Finally, in 146 BCE, the Roman general Scipio Aemilianus breached the city. What followed was slaughter. The Romans burned Carthage to the ground. Its walls were torn down, its harbor filled with rubble. Survivors were enslaved by the tens of thousands, and thus, the city that once ruled the Western Sea was reduced to ash. Segment 6, Echoes in the Ashes. The destruction of Carthage marked the end of an era, but not the end of its legacy. Even in ruins, the memory of Carthage endured. Roman poets and historians Livy, Polybius, Pliny wrote with both admiration and condemnation. They marveled at its architecture, its discipline, its maritime genius. Yet they also justified its destruction, pointing to the specter of infant sacrifice and betrayal. But over time, even Rome could not ignore the ghost it had created. In the 1st century CE, under Emperor Augustus, a new Roman Carthage rose atop the old. It became one of the empire's great cities, seat of the African province, famed for grain exports, public baths and amphitheaters. Saint Augustine, one of early Christianity's greatest theologians, would later study in Roman Carthage. Yet beneath Roman colonnades, the spirit of the Punic city lingered, in the contours of the harbor, in the foundations of homes, in the echo of Phoenician words still spoken in rural hamlets. The real Carthage, its own voice, its own words remained elusive. The Carthaginians left no epic histories like the Greeks or Romans. Their script, though partially deciphered, reveals little about the inner thoughts of the people who once ruled from Biasa Hill. We know more about how they were seen than how they saw themselves. Still, archaeology continues to speak where texts remain silent. Mosaic floors whisper of luxury. Temple stones remember prayers. Amphorae and anchors retrieved from shipwrecks tell of journeys westward toward Cadiz, toward the fog-bound British Isles. Carthage was never just a city, it was an idea. That trade could rival empire. That ships could shape the world as surely as swords. Segment 7. Women merchants and mariners. Carthage was a society where women had a uniquely prominent role, especially compared to Greek and Roman norms. The legendary Dido, founder and queen, set a powerful precedent. In later centuries, women in Carthaginian society appeared to enjoy greater autonomy than their Mediterranean counterparts. Grave inscriptions and votive offerings suggest they could own property, manage estates, and even serve as priestesses of Tanit. Carthaginian merchants, meanwhile, were not just traders, they were cultural emissaries. They spoke multiple languages, adapted to local customs, and built bridges across oceans and cultures. It was through commerce, not conquest, that Carthage extended its influence from Morocco to Malta, from Sicily to Senegal. Mariners from Carthage are even said to have explored far beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. The most famous was Hanno the Navigator, who around 500 BCE led an expedition down the west coast of Africa. He may have reached as far as modern-day Gabon, describing strange beasts, possibly gorillas, flaming mountains, and vast rivers. If true, his voyage would mark one of the earliest known encounters between Mediterranean civilization and tropical Africa. This spirit of exploration, of curiosity without conquest, is a defining trait of the Carthaginian worldview. They didn't just extract resources, they built networks. They didn't just chart maps, they opened routes. Segment 8. A legacy rekindled. Today, Carthage lies in quiet ruins outside modern-day Tunis. Tourists walk among weathered columns, crumbling foundations, and windswept hills. The ancient harbors once teeming with ships are silted and still. Only the sea remains unchanged, but the legacy of Carthage is being re-examined. Modern Tunisia embraces its Punic past as part of a rich cultural inheritance. Museums display terracotta masks, gold jewelry, and votive stelae. Scholars seek to reconstruct the lost Punic language. African and Mediterranean historians challenge the Roman narrative that long painted Carthage as villainous and cruel. Perhaps Carthage was never the barbaric foil Rome needed it to be. Perhaps it was something far more threatening to empire, a rival civilization built not on conquest but commerce, not on force but fluidity. Carthage reminds us that there are many ways to shape the world, not only with armies, but with ships, not only with emperors, but with merchants, not only with iron, but with fire and sails. It burned, yes, but the fire of Carthage still glows beneath the sands, lighting the memory of an empire that ruled the sea.